So as you guys are hyping over the 1.4 patches, me as a privileged content creator is already in the middle of 1.4, like literally, cause I got some connection. Just look at the warm welcoming I'm getting from the section 6. Circle me around with smile on their face. Anyway, today we're gonna discuss about the disaster that is worse than the Hollow Zero. The Anomaly disaster. Are there too many Anomaly? Yeah, that looks and smile from Yanagi would definitely cause the disaster, and those adorable pairs of ears would probably cause disaster on countless amounts of credit cards. So anyway, like and sub so you have Miyabi's blessing to win the 50-50. So I've been tardy to the party to talk about there are too many Anomaly in the Zenless Zone Zero, like this one and this one. But there are also some comment gives a good point about if you include the standard banner, there ain't that much Anomaly characters. It actually looks kind of balanced, but who cares about the standard banner? And if it takes all the standard banner characters out, it's gonna be looking like this. We got 4 Anomaly characters, 3 crit rate, and 3 support stunner, which still looks balanced. But I think the real issue is that they have been giving this limited Anomaly characters or back to back. Like the Bernice and Yanagi one is literally back to back. And the announcement that Miyabi being an Anomaly characters does makes people feels like we have been receiving this Anomaly banner too frequently. It is not the actual amounts that cause the issue, but the velocity of it. And the reason why they came out with so many Anomaly characters is because Disorder team comp is actually the easiest team comp to play. You only need to literally make sure that you swap the characters and use some skills and basic attacks in order to procs it. Unlike the critical dependent characters, you need to set up your attacks along with your stunner in order to get the most out of the stun multiplier. The whole sequence needs a lot of attention and it needs to be performed consciously to deal damage on the enemy while they are stunned. But as for Disorder, you could almost always procs it accidentally without knowing anything about the mechanics, even though the mechanics in itself is very complex, but it's also the easiest mechanics to execute if we are not talking about min-maxing it or playing it at the higher levels. So Disorder is the mechanics that it's easy enough for new player to get a hang up on while maintaining the intricacy of the game for the hardcore player to be drawn into. And the reason why is this good for the longevity of the game, because it's also giving more variety to the game so that the game is not gonna be all about dealing bigger number. And I think the Disorder in itself is fun and rewarding because you have this element of racing against the time. And as for beginner, you are racing to procs the Disorder before the Anomaly ran out. And if you are a hardcore player, you are trying to line up the Disorder with the stun window while managing your buff, your energy, ultimate, and the rotation. It could get very complex, and the difference is it's rewarding to do so, and you don't really see that in other games. The other thing about the Anomaly characters is that it doesn't need a lot of investment to be optimized as compared to the critical characters like Alan Zhou and Zhu Yuan, and that makes it very easy for the casual player to build the Anomaly characters. But this is where the complaint is coming from. I don't know the actual power levels, but it seems like even if you have the best gear with the crit dependent characters, they wouldn't outperform the Anomaly characters with the decent gear, which I honestly think this is what people are actually complaining, and not really the amounts of Anomaly characters, but the fact that Anomaly characters also make these crit dependent characters becomes more irrelevant. And as you can see from this Priden tier list, Zhu Yuan and Alan Zhou has become tier 0.5 since this patch. I think power creeping in Zenless Zone Zero doesn't happen at the scale that would cause the backlash, but it's definitely happening at the point that player base doesn't feel right about it. And I think that is the root cause of the complaint about why are there so many anomalies. And I'm pretty sure that if these anomaly characters doesn't have the power levels that they have right now, player base wouldn't complain about it to this extent. And I think this is an issue that is worth concerning. Like, why would I pool for a characters that is gonna get power creep pretty soon? Why don't I just hold all the pools and wait for the better characters? I know there are like waifu pools, but it does incentivize people to save their pools than just pool it for now. And to fix all the power creep issue that I just said, Zenless Zone Zero has to came out with another mode that would favor the crit damage characters. And I think the introduction of the Endless Tower is a pretty good environment for the stunner, because what is a better way to avoid the attacks from the enemy than just keep stunning the enemy? Yeah, the Caesar shield. But the second best way is definitely stunning the enemy frequently, just like what Honkai Star Rail done with the Erudition unit, because Erudition units are more of a group attacks types of characters, which doesn't really favor the challenge mode in the Honkai Star Rail at that time, which is Memory of Chaos. So they just came out with another game mode that heavily favor the Erudition unit or the group attacks unit in general, like the pure fiction mode. And I think they could do that in Zenless Zone Zero, which just make another game mode that heavily favors the critical unit. And I think the second reason is that people do have this impression that you need two anomaly characters to work together. And if Zenless Zone Zero doesn't came out with the anomaly characters patches after patches, it would disincentivize people to pool for it. If I miss this anomaly characters, maybe I shouldn't pool for another anomaly characters. For examples, if I miss Jane Doe and I'm at the Bernice patch, and I know that the next few patches wouldn't have any anomaly characters, then I think there would be a lot of players wouldn't pool for Bernice, out of the reason that they have already missed Jane Doe, and God know when are they going to rerun the Jane Doe. But if I know that there's Yanagi and Miyabi in the next few patches, it would incentivize me to pool for Bernice, because I would have another second chance to pair another anomaly characters with Bernice. And I think this is the reason why Zenless Zone Zero wanna feed us with so many anomaly characters at once. But from what I test, any anomaly up to this date are working perfectly fine by themselves without pairing another anomaly unit. Like Yanagi is excel in the Mono Electric's team comp, and Bernice could proc the critical damage off field. And Jane Doe is the most self-sufficient characters in the Zenless Zone Zero. It's not like they're trash without another anomaly unit. It has to be intentional. They have to do this by design, so that those who didn't pool for another anomaly unit to pair with wouldn't feel like it's totally useless to have only one anomaly unit. And I do think that overall this is a really good approach from Hoyoverse, that instead of pressuring player to pool for more, they're going with the direction that makes player feel at ease with the game. And I think the last reason is probably because they are considering about the learning curve of the whole Zenless Zone Zero community, which they have already discussed about it in the interview with the Street Fighter. And I think by introducing so many anomaly units at once, player would have better time understanding and figure out how disorder works, and longer time span to learn about disorder properly, because disorder is such a foreign concept to anyone who just joined the game. Yeah, I think that's all I want to share. And see you guys.